You're tuned in to 22 Crime, where the truth hides in the details. Together, we dive into the darkest corners of human nature, exploring the mysteries that have left investigators puzzled and families searching for justice. Because in the world of crime, the truth is never as simple as it seems. With just 22 minutes on the clock, let's dive into today's case and uncover the shocking truth. If you're craving more details after this episode, be sure to check out the full-length version for an even deeper dive into this chilling mystery. The clock is ticking. Let's uncover the truth behind today's mystery. Viewer discretion is advised. 22 is a true crime podcast that delves into real-life crime stories, which often involve graphic descriptions, sensitive content, and strong language that may not be suitable for all audiences. We strive to present these cases with the utmost respect for the victims and their families. Please note that the content discussed may be distressing or triggering for some listeners. Additionally, all resources and information presented in this podcast are obtained from publicly available internet sources. Listener discretion is strongly advised, and we recommend that only mature audiences proceed with caution. If you are sensitive to such content, please consider watching another video. Stay safe and take care of your mental health. Lucy Letby was born on January 4, 1990, in Hereford, England, and grew up in a quiet, middle-class neighborhood. To those who knew her, Lucy was kind-hearted, intelligent, and always eager to help. From an early age, she seemed destined to care for others, a calling that led her to pursue nursing. After excelling in secondary school, Letby enrolled at the University of Chester, where she thrived academically. Her professors noted her aptitude for the medical field, and she soon secured a prestigious role at the Countess of Chester Hospital's neonatal unit. This high-pressure environment, caring for premature and critically ill newborns, demanded both skill and compassion. Letby appeared to embody both. Her colleagues spoke of her dedication, and the families of the infants she cared for saw her as a comforting presence during their most difficult times. Letby's responsibilities were immense, monitoring vitals, administering life-saving medications, and remaining ever vigilant for signs of trouble. She was considered reliable and meticulous, the ideal nurse. Yet, beneath this facade, something far darker was unfolding. The neonatal unit began experiencing a disturbing spike in infant deaths and unexplained emergencies. At first, these tragedies seemed like unfortunate risks in such a delicate ward. But as the months passed and the death toll rose, unsettling questions emerged. The one constant? Lucy Letby was always on duty when these incidents occurred. The neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital was a place where life hung by the thinnest of threads. Staffed with highly skilled doctors and nurses and equipped with the latest medical technology, it was dedicated to providing the best care possible for newborns. Yet between June 2015 and June 2016, an alarming pattern began to emerge: an unsettling rise in infant deaths and sudden, unexplained medical emergencies. Initially, these tragedies were attributed to the harsh realities of neonatal care. Premature and critically ill infants often face overwhelming challenges, and even the most advanced medical interventions cannot save them all. But as the incidents multiplied, doctors and staff realized something far more troubling was happening. This was no longer a string of misfortunes, it was a disturbing pattern. With mounting pressure to uncover the cause, Dr. Stephen Brary and other senior consultants launched an internal investigation. The initial focus was on finding medical explanations, but the investigation soon took a more alarming turn. A review panel, consisting of senior medical staff and external experts, analyzed every case in detail. They created a timeline of events and overlaid it with staff rosters. A chilling discovery was made: many of these tragedies occurred during Lucy Letby's shifts. As the investigation delved deeper, more troubling evidence came to light. The medical records of the affected infants revealed strange anomalies: sudden drops in oxygen levels, erratic heart rates, and distress signals that didn't align with the infant's prior medical conditions. These signs pointed to something external, something deliberate. In response, the hospital administration acted swiftly, moving Letby to a non-clinical role to prevent her from having further contact with patients while the investigation continued. As more evidence emerged, one of the most damning discoveries was the presence of air embolisms in several infants, tiny air bubbles in their bloodstreams, a rare but deadly condition that pointed directly to foul play. The panel also found cases of unexplained insulin spikes in infants who had no history of diabetes. High insulin levels can cause life-threatening hypoglycemia, leading to sudden crises. The presence of insulin in these infants wasn't just unusual, it was intentional. The investigation revealed disturbing patterns of deterioration that could not be explained by natural causes. Investigators also found discrepancies in Letby's documentation, missing entries, altered times, and observations that didn't match her colleagues' reports. It appeared as though Letby had tried to manipulate records to conceal the truth. Interviews with her co-workers painted a conflicted picture. Some saw Letby as compassionate and competent, but others felt uneasy about the frequency of tragedies during her shifts. As more evidence piled up, it became clear that this was no coincidence. By early 2017, the evidence was too overwhelming to ignore. The hospital administration handed over their findings to Cheshire Constabulary, which launched a formal criminal investigation, codenamed Operation Hummingbird, to uncover the full truth behind the mounting tragedies in the neonatal unit. The police investigation into the tragic events at the Countess of Chester Hospital began with a painstaking review of the mountain of evidence provided by the hospital. Medical records, staff rosters, incident reports, every detail was scrutinized. The findings of the hospital's internal review panel were also handed over, marking the starting point for a complex and delicate inquiry. Detectives knew that to unravel the mystery behind the unusual infant deaths, they would need expert help to understand the intricate medical conditions and anomalies that had surfaced. Once Cheshire Constabulary launched Operation Hummingbird, the investigation zeroed in on a singular focus: to build an airtight case against Lucy Letby. Detectives were aware that in a case involving medical professionals, they needed not just compelling evidence, but irrefutable proof of criminal intent. The complexity of neonatal care meant that every piece of the puzzle had to be meticulously examined. The first major step was enlisting the help of neonatologists and pediatric specialists. These medical experts pored over the records of each affected infant, looking for subtle but telling signs of foul play. Their deep understanding of neonatal medicine allowed them to detect patterns and irregularities that could easily have been overlooked by those unfamiliar with such delicate medical care. One key piece of evidence that emerged from this process was a statistical analysis of the incidents. Medical statisticians were brought in to examine the timing and frequency of the deaths and medical emergencies. Their analysis revealed something chilling. The statistical probability of so many deaths and near deaths occurring naturally, especially during Letby's shifts, was astronomically low. This was not a random chance. The numbers pointed toward a deliberate pattern. But it wasn't just the numbers that raised suspicion. Police began interviewing doctors, nurses, and other hospital staff, many of whom had worked side by side with Lucy Letby. As detectives pressed them for details, many staff members recounted their growing unease over the number of incidents that seemed to occur when Letby was on duty. They spoke of how these tragedies often struck without warning, shattering what seemed like stable conditions. Their testimonies painted a troubling picture of mounting suspicions within the neonatal unit. To strengthen the case, the investigation team also combed through hospital CCTV footage. While there wasn't always direct footage of the incidents, the recordings proved valuable in piecing together timelines and confirming certain staff members' movements. Detectives watched Letby's interactions closely, searching for any clues in her behavior that might suggest something more sinister. As the investigation progressed, forensic analysis became a critical tool in gathering hard evidence. Detectives conducted an exhaustive search of Letby's electronic devices, including her computer and mobile phone. What they found was disturbing. Her search history revealed unsettling queries, searches related to the infants who had died and their medical conditions. Even more troubling were the medical notes and handover sheets saved on her devices, containing highly sensitive information about the cases. Some of these documents bore annotations that deepened investigators' suspicions. Was this simply professional curiosity, or was it something far darker? Forensic pathologists also played a pivotal role in the investigation. In the cases where post-mortem examinations had been conducted, these experts sought out any signs of unnatural causes of death. In several cases, they were able to identify the telltale signs of air embolisms, air bubbles in the bloodstream, an anomaly that could not be explained by natural medical conditions. It was another devastating piece of evidence, pointing toward intentional harm. Piece by piece, the detectives were building a strong, detailed case, one that suggested that behind the facade of a caring nurse was someone capable of unimaginable harm. As the investigation into the unexplained deaths and medical emergencies at the Countess of Chester Hospital deepened, the evidence against Lucy Letby became undeniable. By mid-2018, Cheshire Constabulary had gathered enough substantial proof to take decisive action. The months of meticulous work, the forensic analysis, expert testimonies, and patterns of medical anomalies all pointed to a chilling conclusion. On July 3, 2018, detectives arrived at Lucy Letby's home in Chester. This moment was the culmination of a painstaking investigation, and the weight of it could be felt in the community. Letby, who had once been trusted with the care of the hospital's most vulnerable patients, was now under arrest on suspicion of the murder of 8 infants and the attempted murder of 6 more. The shock was palpable, not just in Chester, but across the medical world. How could a nurse, a figure often associated with compassion and care, be implicated in such horrific crimes? Upon her arrest, Letby was taken into custody and subjected to intense questioning. The detectives laid out the damning evidence they had collected, the statistical anomalies that showed an alarming correlation between Letby's shifts and the tragic incidents, the medical experts' testimonies revealing the unnatural causes behind the infant's deteriorations, and the forensic analysis of her electronic devices that hinted at sinister intent. Despite this mountain of evidence, Letby maintained her innocence. She denied any involvement in the deaths and medical emergencies that had rocked the neonatal unit. Though Letby was initially released on bail, the investigation was far from over. Detectives continued to comb through every detail, leaving no stone unturned. They conducted more interviews with hospital staff and grieving families, aiming to build an ironclad case, one that could withstand the inevitable challenges of the judicial system. Their mission was clear: justice for the families who had lost their infants in the most mysterious and tragic circumstances. In June 2019, just under a year after her initial arrest, detectives returned with even more damning evidence. This time, the scope of the investigation had expanded. They had uncovered additional suspicious incidents, newborns who had suffered sudden and unexplained collapses while under Letby's care. These revelations led to Letby's rearrest, now facing accusations of attempting to murder 3 more infants. The case against Letby continued to grow. By November 2020, the investigation had reached a critical juncture. After years of exhaustive inquiry and painstaking forensic work, the police had compiled a comprehensive dossier of evidence, one that left little doubt about Letby's involvement. For the 3rd time, Lucy Letby was arrested. This time, the charges were even graver. She was formally accused of the murder of 8 infants and the attempted murder of 10 others. The charges stemmed from a wealth of evidence, including the detailed medical records of the infants, powerful testimonies from medical experts who had unraveled the unnatural patterns of deterioration, and witness statements from staff who had worked closely with Letby. Forensic data tied it all together, forming a devastating case against her. The justice system was now tasked with holding Letby accountable. But for the families of the victims, the painful journey had only just begun. With each new development, the magnitude of Letby's alleged crimes grew, and the weight of grief in the neonatal unit lingered. The prosecution's case against Lucy Letby was built with painstaking precision, drawing on medical evidence, statistical analysis, and expert testimony. Their goal was to prove that the pattern of infant deaths and medical emergencies at the Countess of Chester Hospital was no accident, but the result of deliberate harm, and that Lucy Letby was the common link. From the outset, the prosecution made a powerful impression. Their opening statement detailed the gravity of the charges and described the alarming pattern of incidents during Letby's shifts. They emphasized the statistical improbability that these events were merely coincidental. The message was clear: Letby had deliberately targeted the most vulnerable, infants who could not defend themselves. At the core of the prosecution's case was a meticulous examination of the infants' medical records. They revealed a chilling pattern: infants who had been stable, or even improving, suddenly took a turn for the worse under mysterious circumstances. The evidence included recurrent drops in oxygen levels, erratic heart rate fluctuations, and unexpected collapses. Every incident was mapped against Letby's work schedule, revealing a disturbing correlation. To solidify their argument, the prosecution brought in statisticians who demonstrated how the likelihood of so many critical incidents occurring naturally during Letby's shifts was astronomically low. This statistical evidence strongly suggested that the incidents were orchestrated rather than random. A series of medical experts testified next. Neonatologists explained the presence of air embolisms, a rare and life-threatening condition caused by air bubbles entering the bloodstream. It was virtually impossible for these embolisms to occur naturally in the hospital environment, suggesting that they had been deliberately introduced. Other experts pointed to unexplained spikes in insulin levels found in some of the infants, causing severe hypoglycemia. These insulin spikes were not the result of medical error, but rather intentional harm. The prosecution also presented forensic evidence from Letby's electronic devices, revealing incriminating search histories. Letby had searched for information related to the infants who had died and their medical conditions. Investigators also found notes and documents that showed a troubling interest in these tragic events. One of the most damning pieces of evidence was Letby's personal notes. In one diary entry, she wrote, "I am evil, and I did this," which the prosecution argued amounted to confessions. These entries painted a picture of someone grappling with the enormity of her actions, suggesting that Letby was fully aware of what she had done. Testimonies from doctors and nurses who worked alongside Letby were also crucial. Several staff members described a string of suspicious incidents that occurred during Letby's shifts. Some had harbored suspicions, but had not acted upon them. Their accounts bolstered the prosecution's claim that something was gravely wrong during the times Letby was on duty. Heartbreaking testimonies from the parents of the affected infants added a human dimension to the case. They spoke of how they had trusted Letby, only to feel utterly betrayed when the truth came to light. These testimonies illustrated the immense pain and loss these families had endured, reinforcing the argument that Letby had betrayed the fundamental trust placed in her as a nurse. As the prosecution delivered their closing argument, they emphasized the overwhelming evidence. They underscored the statistical improbability that these incidents were mere accidents, the expert testimonies that pointed to deliberate harm, and the weight of the forensic evidence. They urged the jury to consider the undeniable pattern of infant deaths and collapses, and to reflect on the emotional testimonies of both medical professionals and grieving families. The defense, however, faced a significant challenge. In their opening statement, they portrayed Lucy Letby as a dedicated and compassionate nurse who had been wrongfully accused. They argued that the prosecution's case was built on circumstantial evidence and lacked direct proof of Letby's involvement in the deaths. The defense stressed that the jury must be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt of Letby's guilt. To challenge the prosecution's medical evidence, the defense called their own experts to the stand. These professionals offered alternative explanations for the infant's deteriorations, pointing out that premature and critically ill newborns are prone to unexpected health complications. The defense suggested that air embolisms and insulin spikes could have been the result of medical errors or underlying conditions, rather than deliberate harm. Regarding the forensic evidence found on Letby's devices, the defense argued that her search histories and notes were not indicative of guilt, but rather showed a nurse struggling to understand the tragic losses around her. They contended that the phrases Letby had written, such as "I am evil," were expressions of emotional distress, rather than admissions of wrongdoing, and that they had been written during a period of intense pressure and scrutiny. A pivotal moment in the trial was when Lucy Letby took the stand in her own defense. Calm and composed, she maintained her innocence throughout her testimony. She expressed deep sorrow for the deaths of the infants, but denied any involvement in their deaths. Letby spoke of the emotional toll the accusations had taken on her, emphasizing her dedication to her job and her commitment to providing the best care possible. Letby also discussed the conditions within the hospital. She described the high-stress nature of her work in the neonatal unit, the challenges of dealing with critically ill newborns, and the systemic issues that she believed could have contributed to the tragic outcomes. The defense suggested that staffing shortages, equipment failures, and other procedural problems could have played a significant role in the deaths. In their closing argument, the defense reiterated that Lucy Letby was a scapegoat, caught in a tragic and complex situation beyond her control. They argued that the prosecution had failed to meet the high burden of proof required for conviction, and urged the jury to consider the possibility that natural causes or hospital failures, rather than deliberate harm, had led to the deaths. After weeks of emotionally charged testimony and intense cross-examinations, the trial reached its critical phase, the verdict. The jury faced the daunting task of deciding whether Letby was guilty of the unimaginable crimes she was accused of. The deliberation process was intense, with the jury carefully weighing the prosecution's narrative of deliberate harm against the defense's arguments of innocence and systemic hospital failures. After several days, the jury returned to deliver their verdict. In a tense and somber moment, the judge called the court to order, and the foreman stood to announce the decision. Lucy Letby was found guilty on multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. The courtroom reacted with a mix of relief, sorrow, and the heavy recognition of the tragedy that had unfolded. During the sentencing phase, the judge, acknowledging the severity of the crimes and their impact, addressed Letby directly, speaking of her betrayal of trust and the calculated nature of her actions. In July 2024, Letby was sentenced to 15 whole life terms, sealing her fate. Although she was acquitted of 2 counts of attempted murder, her crimes left a lasting mark on the families and medical community. Justice had been served, but the scars would remain forever. Thank you so much for listening all the way through. If you've made it to this point, drop a comment with the word "done," and we'll give you a personal shout-out to show our appreciation. We hope you enjoyed this deep dive in this murder and media frenzy. It was as fascinating for us to create as we hope it was for you to hear. If you found this episode thought-provoking, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. We also invite you to join our YouTube channel, where we can answer your questions directly and share exclusive members-only content. We'd love to know what you think about this case. Was justice truly served? Share your opinions in the comments below. We're always eager to hear your thoughts. For those wanting to explore more on true crime, we've included an Amazon affiliate link to some of the books we referenced in our research. Purchasing through the link won't cost you anything extra, but it will support the channel and help us continue bringing you more content. If you're craving even more, consider joining our Patreon community. As a member, you'll get access to the full script of this episode, exclusive book summaries, and even the complete set of images featured in this case, available for purchase in our Patreon store. This has been 22 Crime. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay safe.